A while ago, I announced that I'd be leaving Berlin to travel with my houseboat. Well, the time has finally come. I've been busy getting the boat ready for the big trip. Naturally, there are plenty of jobs left before the boat is ready for the journey. Let's start with the biggest job, adding a motorized roof over the helm at the stern of the boat. First, I add a series of steel square tubes which I fit into the positions I planned for them beforehand. Next, I'm going to build a handrail around the helm platform. The square tubes are prepared in such a way that they can take on water. The tubes are then welded in some areas and bolted in others, so that I can easily remove the setup if needed. I use a set of larger square tubes which can slide over the square tubes I just installed. I cut them in such a way that they overlap the handrail in certain areas. I use cardboard and tape as spacers to center the inner tubes within the larger ones, because next I weld the 3 tubes on each side onto a horizontal roof beam. Next, I'm going to prepare 3 cross beams for the roof. These are made from thinner square tubes to reduce weight. Each one has a tongue that allows it to be bolted down. Next, I'm going to use a set of 2 so-called linear actuators, basically motorized gas springs that can extend or retract at the push of a button with a force of 100 kilograms or about 200 pounds each. They are held in place by 2 brackets. For those, I have to make custom attachment points. The upper bracket is held in place by a metal pin . And then I weld on the head of a bolt so that the bracket has something to grab onto. The lower bracket is simply bolted in place. Now we can do a first test. I got a simple up-down rocker switch. This seems to be working fine, even without the use of wheels or rails. With that, the steel structure is complete. Now I can take everything down and paint the tubes with a thin layer of Overtrol oil. Next, I can go ahead with the final assembly. I add some boat grease to the inner steel tubes as lubrication. Once the structure is complete, I add some wooden strips to the horizontal roof beams, because next I'm adding some steel roof sheets. These are simply glued onto the steel structure. I've installed the rocker switch here temporarily, so now we can do a test with the finished setup. And it works perfectly. The minimum height is chosen so that I have just enough headroom when sitting down. This gives us a minimum bridge clearance of approximately 3.9 meters, which is low enough to clear most bridges. On the same note, I also had to reduce the height of the stovepipe. I took the opportunity to replace it with a single-walled one, which should emit more heat. Additionally, I can get rid of the rain hood, which makes the helm roof the highest point of the boat. Next, I'm going to rob my first boat of its totally overkill electric windlass, which I installed several years ago, and put the original one back. After removing the manual windlass, I drill a few holes to install the electric windlass. This is from an Italian company called Quick, friends of the show, and I can highly recommend their products. After installing the windlass, I put some sealant around the base of the socket, and then it's ready to receive the chain. Now I can attach the anchor. I've installed the electronics here below deck, and I'm using the same battery bank as for the bow thruster. I have a wireless remote for operation from the bow and a wired remote with a display here at the helm. Finally, I've mounted the horn up under the roof . And with that, we can have a look at the more or less finished helm. Finished in the sense that the technology has been installed, but of course there are still some cosmetic fixes to take care of, but that, as always, will be shown in a future video. Now all this new technology doesn't help me if I can't see what I'm doing or where I'm going. With the size of my boat and the helm being at the stern, I can't see what's directly in front of the boat, nor can I see the position of the anchor or the anchor chain. So I'm glad to partner with Reolink for today's video. Reolink is currently celebrating Prime Day with up to 48% off. Make sure you don't miss it. They sent me their latest Omvi camera featuring an 18 megapixel triple lens panoramic system with a continuous 180 degrees panoramic view combined with a separate 4K pan and tilt camera. The camera feeds are displayed side by side in the Reolink app. The upper dual lens camera provides a continuous 180 degree panoramic view, while the lower pan and tilt camera can rotate up to 350 degrees and tilt 50 degrees. What makes this setup particularly useful is that the panoramic view always remains fixed even while the PT camera is moving. That means I never lose my overview of what's happening around the bow of the boat. And if I want a closer look of something, I can simply tap anywhere in the panoramic image and the PT camera automatically turns to that exact location. The Reolink app doesn't require a subscription and supports local storage directly in camera or through a Reolink Wi-Fi hub. Besides the Omvi mounted at the bow, I've also installed some older Reolink cameras that I already owned along the sides of the boat, as well as the new solar floodlight at the rear. The floodlight is mainly there for security. Since I already have a good view of the stern while operating the boat, it's less about navigation and more about monitoring the rear deck and deterring unwanted visitors after dark. the integrated solar panel keeps the built-in battery charged throughout the day. With everything installed, it's time to put the setup to the test. My goal is to anchor this boat entirely by myself without leaving the helm. And so with that, let's get the engine started and get going. During departure, I can use the side cameras to make sure I maintain a safe distance from the barracks ship while turning into the waterway. Once underway, I keep the panoramic view of the Omvi on screen so I can monitor the bow of the boat at all times. When I arrive at the anchoring location, I lower the anchor using the wired remote. From the helm, I can hear and feel the windlass operating, but I can't see the anchor chain itself and the angle it makes with the water. That information is important because it helps me determine whether enough chain has been deployed and whether the anchor is properly setting. Now I can simply look at the image from the pan and tilt camera and see clearly exactly what's happening at the bow while remaining at the helm. The anchor is finally set by reversing the boat and thus pulling the anchor further down into the ground. And as a final check, I look at the position of the anchor chain on the image within the Reolink app so I can determine when the anchor is properly dug in. The same applies when it's time to leave. To retrieve the anchor, I first need to reduce the load on the anchor chain by carefully moving the boat forward until I'm positioned almost directly above it. If I move too far, the chain can end up underneath the bow, so finding the right position is important. By watching the chain through the Omvi camera, I can see the angle gradually change as I approach the correct position. At the same time, I slowly retrieve the chain until the anchor is fully recovered. To conclude, thanks to the Reolink camera system, I now have a large houseboat with virtually no blind spots. Whether I'm navigating, anchoring, or monitoring the boat while it's moored, I can see exactly what's happening around me, which gives me a lot more confidence for the longer trips ahead. Thanks again to Reolink for supporting this video. Check out the link in the description or scan the QR code and make sure you don't miss the Prime Day with up to 48% off.